All right, guys, welcome to the How I Talk podcast. It's your host, Chris Jones.
And Timothy Jones, we are here again.
All righty, guys. So this is episode 3 for the How I Talk video. Of course, today we want to bring some more heat to you, fresh and live. And today we're going to talk about when to lead and when to follow, guys. You always need to pick and choose when's the right time to lead and when's the right time to follow. But some people may feel otherwise. So, Tim, I'll go ahead and bring the conversation directly to you. Can you explain to us, when should we lead? When should we follow?
You got to be able to take, like they tell me, the temperature of the room. You got to be able to know what the room is saying. And there are different times when you lead and when you follow. Now, here's the thing. You got to know that you're not the leader when you're not leading. You got to know you're the leader when you're leading. And so how do you define the leader? The leader, I would say, is the one that would have the influence in the room. So they'll be able to help move the decisions along, move the process along. So you'll know that person is the leader. Now, that person may not have the title. So you have to be make sure you understand. When you sit around the table or you sit around a group of people, the person that you may think has the title may not be the leader. Just because they have the title does not make them the leader. The leader is someone who can influence the group, the people around them to move in a particular direction. We saw what happened when Donald Trump got on Twitter, right? We saw that. Matter of fact, they banned him from all social media. Why? Because they said this guy is too much of an influencer. That means they're saying he's a leader. He can call people to move and migrate in a certain direction with a certain fervor, and that person is the leader. Now, Donald Trump happens to have the title, but at some point, he's not going to be the president anymore. He's not going to be it. So if he's not the president with the title that you say, well, he's the president, he should be able to do this. Well, at some point, he's not going to be the president. In this year, I think, January 20, he's no longer going to be the president. He's going to be a former president. Now, can he still tweet and move those people is the question? Yes, he can. He can probably still move that political party, the Republican Party. Now, that means he's probably the leader. But yet, even though he'll be the leader without having a title, he's not the leader of in other words, the Republican Party probably don't see him as the leader or their leader and say, hey, Donald Trump's our leader. No, but what they do see is that this guy has influence. And just because you have a title doesn't mean you have influence. And that's the first thing you have to have in leadership is to be able to influence or galvanize a group of people to move in a specific direction. And then that person will be the leader sitting around that table. And so that's the person you follow. You don't follow the title, follow the person. What do you think?
That's a good point. Now, you talked about influencing through your example, but what are some attributes of a good leader? What makes a person a great leader?
What makes a person a great leader? I would say the first thing would be communication. Most people overlook that. And a lot of people might say it's charisma, things like that. They may look at someone who's driven, but it's really, when I look at it, I think it's communication. Because the leader will have to communicate and articulate what needs to happen in a clear and concise way. And when he does that, what that does is that gives confidence to the people who are receiving the communication, because then they know exactly what to do. And you think about it, in any situation, you follow someone that you consider, hey, this guy is good, or that guy or that woman, they're good. Well, what made them good is that they gave you clear direction. They were concise with you. You understand what it is you needed to do. So you went and executed, and it made you better. So people, I would say, communication is probably one of the top things that makes someone a good leader because they're able to communicate and articulate to you exactly what needs to happen, when it needs to happen, and where. Now, let me also say this. A good leader will tell you why. Oh, that hurt, didn't it? Yes.
Tell me more. Tell me more.
They'll tell you why. A lot of times people will get the what and the how. They'll tell you what we're going to do and how we're going to do it. But that really doesn't drive people. What drives people is to knowing why you're doing what you're doing. That's what they want to know. You think about it. We go back to Trump. He gave those people the why. Why are we storming the White House? You even know why. I could ask you. You would say, why did they do it? What would you say?
Gotcha.
What would you say? Come on, I want to hear it.
Why did they do it?
Why did they do it?
I really don't even know the full story of like him speaking and stuff like that.
Well, let me tell you, they were doing it in protest of Donald Trump's votes that he had against Biden. They believed that the votes were counted inaccurately, and they believed they were going to take the White House, I guess, from my understanding. But his point was, he told them the why. This is why we're going to take it, because they're trying to take this election from us. They're trying to take votes from me. This is why we're going to do it, people. Now, later on, you're finding, and they're finding right now, the what and the how. So they're telling them, oh, how did they know where to go? What did they find when they went there? They found out the what and the how. They found out through social media. They give them direction on how to go about doing it. They're finding that they were networking together before then, but all of them understood the why. And so a leader needs to make sure he can articulate the why to the people that are around him. Why are we doing this? Because then I can join forces with you now that I know the why. I may not know the what or the how. I may not know what we're going to do and how we're going to do it. Well, I'll find that out later. But boy, if I know the why, if I know why we're doing it, why we're going, why do we want to go out and win this football game? We can get to the playoffs. That's why. Now, how we're going to do it? Here's the scheme. What are we going to do? Here's the play. You see? So then when people know the why and why they got to put all of their energy and effort, and it's been communicated to them in a fashion that they're able to use their abilities and skills, guess what? People get galvanized. That would then, they would say that's a good leader.
Okay. So who do you think is who are people that you consider great leaders?
My great leaders would come, if I were to pick some from the world, I would pick people like Martin Luther King Jr., because he galvanized a large group of people. He gave them the why. Why? Because we're trying to end racism. I mean, he knew all of those things. The why was there, and people were galvanized behind him. But if you want to look at great leaders, I would say go to the Bible, look at Moses. Moses leading the people out of the children of Israel. Now that's a great leader. He led millions out of the land of Egypt. When they were in bondage, he leads them. And in that process, guess this what? It ties to our example. We're looking at, hey, great leaders and then great followers, right? But in that example, when Moses coming out of the wilderness with those group of people, guess who his protege was? A guy named Joshua. Joshua was not trying to be the leader. See, he understood that was not my position. And when you understand your place and your position, you understanding the why you have to do things. Why are we doing this? So we can free the people out of bondage. How and what we're going to do it, we'll explain it to you. When you understand your role that's been communicated and articulated to you, then at that point you can turn and say, okay, I understand what I'm supposed to do. And Joshua understood that. And if you read later on, Joshua then received the mantle of leadership. See, your position may come a time in which you become the leader. So you as the follower, you want people to follow you as you would expect them to follow when you're the leader and when you're the follower. So let's say if I'm a follower, then I need to follow my leader with the same vigor that I would expect a follower to follow me.
That's a great point that you're saying, though, because one of the quotes that I have from Aristotle says, he who cannot be a good follower cannot be a good leader.
That's
In
right.
order to be a good leader, you first have to be a good follower. And following means you need to pay attention to what a good leader looks like, but it also doesn't mean that you got a chance to see good leadership. You may have seen poor leadership and make you realize that this is not the angle that I want to approach. But as a follower, you understand, okay, what can I do to galvanize the troops to really believe in me, to understand this is the correct way to do it.
So I'm sure you've had poor leadership, Chris. So tell us an example of poor leadership.
I would say my example of poor leadership would have to be, working several jobs that I did in college. Won't go into details of those jobs, but different jobs that I've done where I think poor leadership happened because one, there was, as you alluded to earlier, there was no why. There was no sense of culture. Number two,
Right.
we didn't feel like we're a part of something big. Even if it was just working a job, if you can get people to buy into the culture of what we're trying to accomplish here, then a lot of people will want to follow you, right? Whether they agree or
Yeah.
disagree, but if you can get them to buy in, that's a great way to get people all on board. I think when I saw a chance of good leadership, though, it really showed me what poor leadership was. I myself had to go through being a poor leader. I don't think I'm a great leader. I'm learning to be a better leader, but I got a chance to see myself what poor leadership looked like when I was a leader myself. Because I saw the things that I was doing. I was like, okay, these are the flaws I need to work on to be a better leader. But the best opportunity that I got to see as a great leader was my first job out of college. And boy, was it the job that I was like, man, this guy really gets on my nerves. But he was a great leader, honestly. He changed my mind. One, he kept me professional. Two, he kept everybody on board with the direction of where we're going. And three, he always made sure that everybody was accomplishing what we set out to accomplish at the beginning of the year or throughout the year. So I thought he was a great leader. Now, did he twist and turn me a lot where I was like wanting to fight back and say, man, I hate this job? Was I upset? Yes, definitely much so. But the reason I knew he was a great leader, one, I grew tremendously when I went to my next job. And number two is when I got a chance to go to my next job or whenever I left that day job, I realized how much of a great leader he was and the direction he was trying to take me. He was trying to grow me to become a great leader. And
Yeah.
that's when I knew if you want to be a great follower, you have to learn what leadership is by sitting back and watching others do great things. I'd even say with me and you as my father, I've got a chance to see what leadership looks like as a great leader. And sometimes, hey, you'll push us as a family, but I mean, don't get me wrong, God, leave, man. I'll be irritated sometimes. We'll be frustrated, but there's a point and there's a purpose. And one thing about leadership, I would say, is that it's not always smooth sailing. As a follower, it's not always going to be smooth sailing. So you have to get on board to be able to really hold on, because there's going to be times you like, I just want to jump off the ship. But you got to understand the ship is still going in the direction it sailed out to be. And us as a group have to come together and redirect if we do go off course. So that's what I've learned as far as being a leader, from the good and the bad.
Mm-hmm.
What about yourself?
Yeah, I mean, I would concur because believe me, I've had my share of bad leadership. There's a lot of examples I could probably give you that I did this bad leadership, and probably a lot of people would tell you, hey, he's terrible leader. He's a terrible leader. And that's what you have to go through. It's a development process. You don't just come out being a good leader. It takes time to develop. It takes time to understand when you're supposed to speak, when you're not as a leader. It takes time to understand how do I galvanize? How do I create culture? It's not overnight. So you may be sitting there going, you know what, I'm not a great leader. That's okay. That's okay. It takes development. Understanding who you are, your attributes, your strengths, understanding how they can be applied, and understanding people. Make sure you're getting them in the right position to be successful. Because when they're successful, the organization is successful. The group is successful. So you got to make the individual successful. And sometimes the leader has to move people and put them in positions they don't like. They don't want to be in because, they don't have the skill set. And of course, they want to prove you wrong, right? So then they'll leave, go somewhere else and say, I'm going to prove them wrong. But then if they do, then you push them to be better. But maybe in where they're at with you, where they're at in your organization or in your group, they may not be there yet. They may not be there. And you may not be the one. Let me give you a shocker. You may not be the one that cultivates that in them. It may be somebody else. Mm-hmm. Yeah, the Bible tells us one plant, one waters, and another one reaps. So you may be the one that's just watering. And it may be another guy that reaps. It's just the way it works. Right. Unfortunately, we can't control that aspect. And you may be the same guy that plants, that waters, and reaps. You may be that same person when they're in your organization. in your organization or group. And so
That's
you
true.
got to, that's the way it works, you know, and sometimes they'll leave you, and that's okay. But, you know, you yourself got to grow as a leader. I mean, I have to grow as a leader. I don't think there's ever a time you can take a break as a leader. You can't take a break and say, I'm not leading today. You can't be a leader and say, I'm not leading today. It just doesn't work. You lead every day you get up. You lead every time you step out. You're deciding, hey, I'm going to be a leader. And you're leading in your actions, your morality, the things you do and say. And people are watching if you're the leader or the designated leader. They are watching. So you got to match up with what you say and do. They have to align, or else people are going to say, that guy right there, hypocrite.
Exactly. So let's unpack this, right? We're talking about when to lead, when to follow. Okay. So I wrote down a list of things that would make a person a follower, right? And before I go into those list of things, one thing I would also say about people that lead, there's also people that want to lead and they only want to lead, right? They never want to be in a follower position. I would tell you now that is a mistake, because you may want to be around friends, you may be around other peers, family, where you always are calling the shots or in a position of leadership. Why? It makes you powerful. It strokes your ego. But when you're in a position where you can become a follower, especially as you're elevating, each level you go up as you elevate, you'll be in a position as a follower first. First, you got to understand how to run and walk. So you're going to crawl a little bit and, you know, be with the peers around you that are above you. But also what it does is it strengthens you, but it also shows you how to be able to sit in a room where everybody may be smarter, wiser than you. How do you handle that? You're not the go-to person anymore. How do you handle that? And a lot of people's egos sometimes cannot handle that. So I would say always look for a position to follow. There's nothing wrong with it. People get the misperception that following is weak. Of course, to an extent, yes, following can be weak on certain things, but it's never wrong to be a follower when growth is included. A positive way of growth is what I'm saying. So let me go back to some tips that I think, as far as a follower, some things that you'll see. One is when you're a mentee, obviously. You know, you have a mentor, you're the mentee, you're learning from them. They're going to show you the ropes. They're going to explain to you some opportunities that you could dive into, how to be a better person, how to be a better, you know, employee or a better boss, whatever the case may be. But they're going to grow you exponentially. The other one is when you're training or delegating, when you want to develop a team and the leaders, when you're also aware that it's your weakness. A great leader also will understand their weakness, and sometimes they'll export that weakness somewhere else where they're not necessarily, they may not be the leader calling the shots of this is what we should do, this is exactly where we should partake in or not do. But I do believe that if it's an area of weakness, look for somebody that is strong in that area to show you and grow you. Of course,
right there, and every leader has areas of weakness. I'm glad you mentioned that, Chris, because every leader has them. So if you think you're a leader that doesn't have areas of weakness, you're sadly mistaken. We all do. And guess what? In those areas of weakness, I mean, you got to find someone that can strengthen you. They have to be your strength in the area that you're weak. And you got to also find yourself not being the smartest one in the room. If you're the smartest one in the room and you want to grow, you better get out of that room, go find another room. You can't be the smartest one in the room and grow. It won't happen because you're going to be the smartest one. So you got to go to another room where people are smarter. So then when you're leading an organization, you may have to find yourself being taught outside of that organization. You may have to find yourself finding a coach that knows more than you, a leadership coach like I have. I have leadership coaches. I have business coaches. Guess what? They pour into me. They're smarter than me. I have theological coaches. I have people that I'm sitting around. They're smarter than me. They know more than me, and I know they know more than me, but they help me grow. And they help me grow because they know more. And those are the people you got to align yourself with if you're going to be a good leader.
Yeah, definitely agree. And being in those rooms, sometimes, again, going back to ego, it can make you feel so small because I'm in these rooms and these guys know 10 times more, these women know 10 times more than what I know. But what you'll understand, what everybody says, you hang around 10 millionaires, you'll be the 11th one. You're just getting wiser. You're moving forward towards your goals. So I think being a great leader is something that very few people have or very few people want, but should obtain to be that. Don't always be the follower in the back seat. It's easy to be the follower, but it is very hard to be the leader. Why?
It's
The
hard.
leader is
You're
always
going
going
to
to
be
be
criticized. And most people
criticized.
don't like to be criticized.
The
Your
finger's
judgment
pointing
is
at
gonna,
you.
what's that?
The finger is always pointing at you when things
Yeah.
go great or not so great.
Yeah, great. Let me tell you this. When they go great, you as a leader can't take the credit. Don't take the credit. Because if you do, people are not, you got to give the credit away when your group succeed. But when your group fails, you got to take all the blame. Got to take it off. And you have to open yourself up to criticism, which is another thing that's very hurtful, because people will criticize you left and right. They're going to talk about you, talk about your decision making. Why did you even do these things? And you may have explained the why on why you're doing all of these things. But yet, if one thing goes wrong, they're going to put that finger on you and say, you caused us this problem. And you have to sit there and you got to learn how to take it, because you're the leader. And that's what leaders do. They have to accept the responsibility that comes with that. And it may be you don't get any of the credit and you're the one taking all the blame, but you're the one that's got to push that organization and cause them to try to move in a direction that they may even find uncomfortable, cross over rivers and seas that they may not want to cross over, fight enemies they may not consider fighting. You have to consider them to say, I'm going to grow when I don't want to grow, walk when I want to sit, and run when I want to walk. See, this is the type of things you got to do to people as the leader. That's tough.
Right.
It's tough. It's
Definitely.
tough.
And there's another thing is, as you elevate, you're not, again, always going to be the leader in every situation. We've talked about that previously. But let me relate it to sports. You can be over time. You can be. But let me give you an example in sports, right? A great leader in sports, LeBron James. I think he's a tremendous leader. But before he was a tremendous leader, he was a follower. And then he didn't do so great as a leader. He was a follower when he went to the Heat. He learned how to be a great leader from Dwayne Wade. That's how he became a great leader. Dwayne Wade was already a really good leader. He led a team already to a championship. So he showed him the ropes. And guess what? When he gave him the leadership that first year in Miami, what happened? They lost to the Mavs. LeBron fell flat on his face. He fell to the world. Everybody was pointing fingers. But what did that happen to LeBron? He faced criticism. He came back the next year. They won. He came back stronger. Now look at him, right? People are saying, hey, he's one of the greatest ever. He might win back-to-back this year. Who knows? Hey, I'm rooting for him. But my point is, though, when you get to these teams and you grow with people, sometimes you got to realize in certain groups, you may not be the leader. You may aim for it and you could potentially do it. But at that current time, you may not be the leader. An example is perfect role players. Got Robert Ory, Jason Terry, Derek Fisher, all great role players. Are they the leaders? By no means necessary. But did they make a staple in NBA history? Yes, they did, with big shots, right? And how does the follower feel so comfortable taking such a big shot? You got to look at their leader. The leader instilled that confidence. Look at Steve Kerr. Look at John Paxson. Instilled that confidence in them. It was Michael Jordan. It was Phil Jackson. They instilled that confidence. Take the shot. If I give it to you, take the shot.
You look at the group, the Golden State Warriors, they got a new crew coming in. They got a new crew of guys. They got still Steph Curry. They still got Draymond. And they got the other shooter. What's his name?
Clay.
So they still got those three as their core. But they brought in a lot of different new guys. And guess what? I watched that team play. And guess what? Those guys seem confident on that court. It just seems they're willing to shoot that ball and everything. And that comes, I think, from Steve Kerr. Because I think Steve Kerr is probably instilling in them, you can make that shot. You can do it. And so if he's telling them that and giving them that green light to go for it, and then trying to guide them through the process, maybe say, hey, it's not a good time to take it. But, you still have the green light to do it. But you got to know when to do it. So I think Steve Kerr is putting confidence in that team. And I wouldn't be surprised if you see that team doing very, very well. They seem to be doing well right now. But I wouldn't be surprised if you see that team do well because they're going to be working together in that culture as one group, one unit, and where no one really is, hey, I'm going to take all the credit. So that is,
you know what's a better?
Go ahead.
Oh, go ahead. No, go ahead.
I think that's a good example of good leadership.
You know what's an even better example is the Spurs.
What's that?
Yeah, the Spurs are very identical to the Warriors in the fact that the culture, the Spurs have been good for years, 20 plus years. I think they went 20 years straight or 19 years straight of being in the NBA playoffs. And Pop is really at the center of that culture. But the Patriots are another great example. When there's great leadership and there's great culture, you can move the pieces.
Let's talk about the Patriots. Let's talk about it.
Let's talk about
We're maybe finding who the leader was at the Patriots.
Are you saying Tom Brady was?
We may find that Tom Brady was the leader because Tom Brady moves from one organization to another, no different than LeBron. One organization to another. And just by stepping in to another organization, that organization almost, it's in getting ready to play to go to the championship game. And look at where the Patriots, whom he left, they didn't even make the playoffs. So then you have to ask yourself, was Tom the leader or was Bill Belichick? Yeah. And from what we see so far, it looks as if the leadership came from Tom. Bill may have had the system, a system that worked, and that system worked for Tom, and he utilized the system as the leader. Tom may have been the one that's telling the guys, why are we going to do this? To win another Super Bowl.
Right.
He might be the one doing all the whys behind the scenes. Because
he's the one galvanizing the troops, really getting them in ready for battle.
He goes to Tampa Bay, and he gets that wide receiver to come play with him, the one Bill didn't want.
Right.
And look at how well he's doing in Tampa Bay. So I'm saying that I think Tom Brady, you see his examples of leadership, I think they're shining through right now from what I can see. He goes to another place, and I don't see them being less next year. I see them being just as good next year, maybe even better. So I don't even know what, they're going to do in New England. I don't see where they're going to even have the leadership is crumbling. People are jumping ship. They're like rats getting out of there, just jumping ship left and right. Why? Because they know, hey, maybe they're seeing it wasn't Bill, it was Tom.
Right. Yeah. So, I mean, you're right. There's been great leaders. Doesn't necessarily mean you may agree with their philosophy on the way that they lead, but there's been several great leaders that have brought people of all walks of life together to accomplish a goal, whether it was good or bad. There's all different types of leadership, and there's different types of followers. So with that being said, Tim, did you want to say anything else or share anything else with the audience?
No, I don't want to share anything else other than, hey, we love you here at High Talk. That's what we want to do is we want to talk so that you can get some information. We want to flood you with that type of information. And guess what? We hope this information will make you better as a leader and even as a follower. So that's our goal, is to give you this type of information. And here it is. We hope it helps you develop, and you can even use it in some way, maybe with your groups, or maybe even use this podcast to show people, listen at what they're saying.
Definitely, guys. And again, it's real, it's raw, it's how I talk. It's authentic, of course, guys. So again, if you want to reach out to us, howitalk20@gmail.com. You can always follow us on social media accounts at How I Talk. Until then, guys, for the next one, we'll see you next week.
All right. Peace out.